Kıymetli misafirlerimiz, değerli konuklarımız, hoş geldiniz.
Esteemed guests, welcome. Today's panel topic is startups and innovators on the forefront. I'd like to invite Bekir Bolat from the Presidency Office of Investment and Finance. Representative, the floor is yours, Bekir Bolat. And our panelists, Hyperver co-founder and general manager Çayan Baykal, Arke Telekom executive partner Barış Karadeniz, Exentech general manager Ozan Erbasan, and Alloy Additive founder Mehmet Emre Çetinkaya. Mic is off right now. Yes, now it is audible. Thank you. Well, we have limited time, that's why we'll be a bit fast, if it is okay for you. But as you all know, entrepreneurship ecosystem in Turkey is very crucial. In the last periods, between 2010 and 2020, there is $815 million for all the investments, but in the last 5 years, over $5 billion of investment entered into Turkish technology ecosystem. And in the last periods, with respect to defense industry, Turkey is the 11th largest defense exporter of the world, and all NATO members, 5% of their GDPs are going to be allocated to defense industry. For that reason, the vertical of defense will be having a brighter potential in the future. One of the most important topics is entrepreneurs for us, of course. There are many questions that I'd like to ask to entrepreneurs. Maybe they have many problems, so we're going to listen to the opportunities and their problems all together in this casual conversation environment. Maybe my first question will be as following, especially specific to the vertical of defense. What makes the defense industry successful or unsuccessful according to you? What can you say? Çayan, maybe I can start with you. Well, hello everybody. I'd like to thank Saha organization team for this great event. As an answer to this question, in the entrepreneurship environment, in the defense side, there are both opportunities and risks. I think the most precious one among them has occurred in the last 15 years, especially the demand for the local products. It is very crucial for us in order to meet the first user, first customer and consumer, especially compared to our competitors abroad. If you are going to produce a product from scratch, if a product is local, people who'd like to buy this product would like to get the national and local ones. And on the risk side, you work with respect to military, so it is very difficult. There comes a military doctrine. It has been appreciated for many years. That's why it is very difficult to make your product be accepted by them. And R&D processes require so much time. This is actually the contrary of the entrepreneurship soul, especially the young ones would like to have fast and quick results. That's why it has some risks. Entrepreneurs should be much more patient and they should be more powerful. Well, this is all I can say. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. My question will be valid for all the speakers. Well, our situation is a bit different than other companies. We are not very young. I am over 50 years. In our company, maybe we can... Yeah, thank you. Well, company is not like a startup, actually. I'd like to give an answer to this question specific to my company. I worked for Aselsan for 15 years, and I am now the subcontractor of Aselsan for the last 12 years. As startup, for the first time, we started to produce a product under our own facility. Maybe we have this advantage or difference from the young companies. We have never tried to produce new things to the military and make them accept what we have produced. Since we have been in the defense industry for so long, we knew. That's why we served in Aselsan for many years, and based on this experience, we understood the gaps. That's why we became successful. Those who never walked on the path that we had walked and feeling a bit lost, I don't know what I would recommend to them, but if they approach to me, I will give all kinds of information to them. Thank you. Ozan Bey, please. Yes, now it's audible. Well, actually, there is this side of the issue. You have to be patient, but the financial patience side of it is a bit challenging. And I'll talk about NATO Diana program later on. Attractions and products, entrepreneurial ideas, and their suitability to the defense industry are very critical. If we want these products to be accepted by the institutions, enterprises have some challenges for these products to be known beforehand because they don't have contacts upfront or they have to make R&D payments. So there could be financial and contact related problems. And other than that, thanks to this incubator programs, accelerator programs, if these programs are disseminated, then your contacts could be much more increased and funding could be solved. And this is what enterprises need. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your invitation. Actually, Barış Bey has mentioned something very well. Without getting an experience, directly diving into the water is very difficult. If you'd like to swim in the ocean before swimming in the sea, it is a big difficulty. We worked in the private sector for 6 years, and then, based on a need, we found alloy additive. But 4 years, we comprehended the dynamics of the defense industry, then I think afterwards making such an attempt made much more meaning. There should be three pillars here. First and foremost, you need to be solving a need and you need to solve the problem with the technique. And the third pillar is bureaucracy, but you might say this is related to network or understanding the depth of this business case to be able to reach the right people or the finance. I think these three pillars are very crucial in the defense industry. Networks and understanding the need owner, these are very crucial. We generally work with the R&D departments because what we do is very niche in the world. Only one or two companies in the Europe does what we do. Maybe we are the fifth company in Turkey. We work in the production of titanium alloys. So it's very niche. That's why companies have not seen such a technology beforehand. You have to explain them, and it might take years. So if there is other products which are much more disseminated, if you started to work on them as an entrepreneur, then it is much more possible to become a startup with your own products later on. But you have to turn the wheel in the very beginning because maybe in the US ideas could be invested on billions of dollars, but in Turkey our investors would like to see the contract. But in years things are changing, developing, but we have to see the all dynamics. And later on, slowly but surely, the development should be enhanced. Thank you very much. Thank you. In our country or in other cultures, the perspective of the entrepreneurial soul or the structure of the entrepreneurs might change in days. But what we have seen on the ground and what we have listened to the entrepreneurs, especially in Turkey, it is all about reaching to finance. especially when it comes to funding over a certain threshold. Unfortunately, some enterprises have some difficulties. So from your perspective, Mehmet Ali Bey, let's continue with you. When it comes to the Turkish entrepreneurs again and their access to national and international funds, are they in the radar of these international or national financiers? How should they position themselves according to the strategic investors? Well, actually, we have an enterprise in the European countries supported by ESA. Germany is very popular, but Turkey is not like that. Things are developing very fast, and there is a very quick transformation in Turkey, and I believe that it's going to happen in the investment way. After the selling of Peak Games, I think real exit startups, companies, these terms were to be understood after 2012. Well, this structure is very similar to Silicon Valley structure. We need some time, but we are going really fast, especially in the defense industry. There is a very great growth. And this is the same in the global, but thanks be to God, Turkey had felt this way too before and initiated the investments very early. You've mentioned strategic investors. It could be critical. Defense industry companies can make investments on the startups and they could make a product usable in the battlefield areas. You cannot get a product from a startup because it has to be tested on the ground. If the companies can hold the hands of the startups and develop products together without intervening in their execution and provide finance, I think we can see great growing startups, especially on the vertical of defense. On the venture capital side, we see many enterprises who are acquired because these contacts, these people prefer buying these products or companies, especially when we say a broad investment radar. First of all, they check the products which are produced in the country. We need huge investment in the country. After these are appreciated in the country, then we can open up ourselves for other countries. They should be supported with EU funds and NATO funds. So the presidency side, I think, has many responsibilities. We have to be promoted. For example, the Ministry of Industry and Technology on the NATO side, we have been supported and promoted very well, and I think great works will emerge, so we need these contacts. Okay, so I'll refine the same question, and I'd like to ask this to Barış Bey again. These international funds and international investors, how should they be a partner to these investments, while the minority shareholder, partner in production, because there is this sine qua non, there is this very unique structure of the defense industry. That's why it's a bit difficult. What can you say? Well, you are very right. I have very limited experience. That's why I'd like to give my best to you. As Ozan has mentioned, we are one of the 3 Turkish companies accepted by Diana Company. We are working on the communication business. After we were accepted by this Diana program, investors started to show their attention to us because they said, okay, NATO trusts them. They were given this Diana program accessibility now. They thought they could be doing something. Now, what is an investor? What is pitch deck? What is the exit? I even didn't know these words. But right now, I had to do pitch deck to 7 or 8 investors. So for that reason, when you ask me, I could say that at the level of NATO, you need to prove your reputation and strength. If you can get some sort of validation, many doors will open for you. In Turkey, perhaps we could do something similar to Diana. I'm not so sure. Maybe this is possible. Maybe such a path could be really nice. Well, there are many things to say. But I'd like to just stop a bit. And what Mehmet has mentioned is really interesting, and I'd like to touch upon this. For example, big companies should hold the hands of the small companies. The giants of the industry should accompany them. They should help them on their walk on this path. But how much they should protect them, or how much they should be suspicious whether these small companies could be a competitor for them in the future. Maybe they could be a bit hesitant. Well, I'm sure there are many other people who are much more senior than me to talk about these issues. Well, we are trying to develop ourselves. Why? Because we worked with Aselsan. Within 5 years, we are a company of 10 people, by the way. $3 billion of work was finalized. Some of them are in the defense ministry, and some of them are in the Aselsan. We don't have our own product right now. So what is the ideal relationship type? Should it be a supplier, or should it be a solution partner to big places? What can you say? When you develop a product with a bigger company, even just a small percentage is the share of the subcontracted. Like something very simple. I'll give you some sort of commissions when we sell your products. If that is the relationship, I believe things could go much more flourished. But then my very good men would like to be my subcontractors. This could be their reflex. They might be hesitant, but this is not easy. Nobody would like to leave that salary there and try to start a new adventure. Thank you, Chayan. I think it is an ecosystem to be developed further, especially in the startup side. Seed and pre-seed investments in the world has started to be done, especially in Turkey, has started to be done very actively by COSGAP and many other institutions to set the fire. But in the other stage, in the upcoming phases, resources are very important, but it's a bit limited, and you have to open up for other countries. All the success stories in Turkey have received some attention, and then they have gone to Europe, Singapore, or the US, and they have become successful in the exit stories. But in the defense industry, it's a bottleneck because they want us to stay in this country. They want this technology to belong to Turkey, and they don't want this to go to abroad. So this is like a big disappointment for the investors and enterprises, because we'd like to grow. That's why we receive investments, and that's why we are getting big investments. We try to reach the resources. So there should be a roadmap drawn by the seniors. There should be a model so that defense enterprises can get investment from abroad rather than a direct investment. By the way, NATO Innovation Forum is something really nice. Such kind of structures could produce solutions for these problems. There should be umbrella institutions, and these institutions could send investments to local companies. I think it could be a solution. Thank you. Of course, there are some challenges of the ecosystem, but when we introduce Turkey's investment environment, we hear this argument a lot. Engineering in Turkey, and experience and the capacity and the skill. This is very important. We always say this, but in every country that I visit, I get a validation for these aspects of Turkey. We have the great engineering capacity. What would be the value proposition of Turkey in addition to these skills for this enterprise ecosystem? It could be contractors, subcontractors, or costs. What could be the value proposition of Turkey in the defense industry? What can you say? Emre, maybe we can start with you. I'd like to start with an example. we are really we'd like to sacrifice as a nation. We never say it is 5 p.m., okay, I'm going to leave. It is not the culture that we have. I'd like to give you an example. One of our employees left in the morning, went to Ankara. We are in Istanbul, by the way. They went to Ankara, visited different places in Ankara, and then it was about to finish the working time. It was 5:15, and he said, "Wait for me, please. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I know you are going to leave at 5:30." And the person said, "My shuttle will leave. The house is in Kırıkkale, by the way." He said, "I'll leave you. I'll just get you there." So, in order for this product to be delivered on time, in order to make our customers satisfied, he drove that many kilometers. Maybe in Europe, maybe in the US, it is very difficult to make such things possible. When it comes to defense industry, our engineers are on the sacrificing side, and some things that Europeans or the British can't do can be done. And literature is, for example, research. They are creating summaries out of 85 abstracts. Our engineers are focused on results and solutions, and I think we have this practical intelligence. Well, thanks to this passion, I believe we have the biggest advantage in the defense industry.
Mr. Ozan, it's actually the enterprises because we're a young country, we're a strong country, so with those enterprises, the engineers and the engineer potential can be used in the best way possible, and with organizations that you can keep as agile as possible. We're young, we're strong, and population-wise, we're very crowded. And all the efforts, we have all the individuals that can be utilized, and that could be our biggest advantage. And ensuring the conditions, solving the problems would be, we're capable and competent as engineers. Thank you. You have more experience in the industry. Not audible without a microphone. Turkish engineers are good, but not only in the defense industry. We all know this, and we're living in a very difficult geography. You know the situation with the neighbor. Greece is the most problem-free neighbor. We are being hit at the borders, and up in the north and down in the south. We are a member of NATO, but when you ask which NATO country is being attacked, you would run. In the survey, Turkey is the country that others are least eager to run for when you ask. So we need to be strong, and therefore the defense industry is strong, and because it's strong, it is important monetary-wise and prestige-wise, and high-quality engineers are coming here, and we're using it in the best way possible. I want to talk about those in need. When you're a young individual, a young entrepreneur, both the defense industry, the head of the defense industry, and when you say young, they are very much keen and eager to share their field experiences and share it with us. And I would like to say this for the ecosystem. There's yet another experience that I would like to tell you. An international investor was following a 500-person research and development project, and in the shortlist they couldn't decide India or Turkey, and we were worried about costs, and then they decided for Turkey. And we were curious as to what affected the decision makers. The engineers are trained for 2 years, and then they can become added value and meaningful for us. So all the Indians who received that training, they were looking for ways to go to Silicon Valley or to London. That was their #1 priority. But the minute an engineer feels that they have been invested in, they remain in the company, which adds value and which brings added value. So in the macro picture, it is not always the costs that determine the cost of an investment. There are many decisions in our country, in this geography. You know, Europe, North Africa, Middle East, and Asia have Turkey right in the center with this young, dynamic, and educated population, which means that Turkey is a very strong center of force and power, which will hopefully increase in the upcoming periods. And defense is going to be one of the vertical components that seriously support this. I'm moving on to my last questions. We're running out of time. So therefore, at the last stage, at the final stage, particularly on the defense side, both, you know, we've got the ecosystem players here at Saha Istanbul Convention. What would your message be? It could be for entrepreneurs, for investors, for main contractors. If you've got any final words, now that we are here and on the stage, please do tell so that they go to the right address. Mr. Chayan, let us start with you. Perhaps I can give some recommendations to entrepreneurs. It looks like a challenging journey externally, and it is. But still, you need to be a part of the ecosystem. You need to be, you know, perhaps you don't have the sources, the wrong product, but you need to be a cog in that wheel, because when you're patient, eventually you will have opportunities. Okay, you may not, but opportunities come to those who wait for it, and you never know what comes from where. But once you talk to the customer, you can capture the right product. Or if you're in the ecosystem, you're networking in a pair or convention, he will be your investor perhaps. So being a part of these networking opportunities, it is great, so that you need to be on the field so that the ball strikes you. And here we are in the field. Now the system is wide and vast. It addresses everyone. But let me talk for the investors. Such investors receiving investments is very important. And the investors can take a bit more of a risk, and they can look into these companies, they can provide them more support. This is what I think. And perhaps, even if it's not like Diana project, it could be TÜBİTAK, that's Turkish Scientific Authority, or other companies. If they can give an extra grant-like support, that would be a good idea too. Because it was last year we submitted an application to TÜBİTAK, and I've got commanders here. They will know, because there's a waveform, neural waveform, and perhaps every company, they've got their own wirelesses. But when you go as NATO, you cannot talk with your in Bosnia-Herzegovina war. This is how it happens. Every NATO company has one wireless, and everyone is saying in their headquarters, they issue a command. And they've got their software-based, let us develop a wavelength for the NATO countries, let us include it in the wireless, so if there's a joint operation and the situation is bad anyway. So we took those standards developed, we developed it independently, we can sell it overseas. You know, we cannot, we won't manufacture wirelesses, but you know, you can sell it to military electronic industries as a software, as a... The project was refused, and the grounds for refusing, it wasn't compared with the equivalent items, and I couldn't explain this. There are no equivalents, a software for a joint wireless channel. Everyone does have a wireless, but it's meaningless to compare it, because we want to do something common and joint. And you know, the standards are not written by soldiers, but by the industry experts. And everyone's putting their hands under the stone to write it. And when they're writing these standards, they also go back to their countries and they carry out development activities, so that once it's ready, they want to be ready. You know, small countries like Lithuania, they don't have wirelesses. They'll buy wirelesses from others. But I couldn't explain this to anyone. I couldn't find a person because software, wireless, in waveform, it's a very narrow niche area, and I don't expect the referee or the judge to understand me either. So this is the gap that we're facing. So if there was a specialized approach for the defense industry, not an academic from an X university, but a mentor from a defense industry, if they were the referee or the judge, if there was such an action, a step, a move to pave the path for young companies. Thank you, Mr. Ozan. Now, when you talk about enterprise, all our voices tremble because they see it as project, but both parties think of financing, and it is like synonymous with Death Valley. And in technoparks or in institutions, before developments, the accelerating programs, the trainings, all the improvement related activities and business models and the financing need to be planned, but the cost advantages and the financial advantages need to be watched so that you get it in the right time, which is a challenge, and then implementing it with the right business plan is another challenge. So implementing that would be the main decision for that enterprise, and thank you very much. Mr. Mehmet. Thank you. I will separate it into three groups: entrepreneurs, investors, and customers. Entrepreneurship is very difficult, as Mr. Chayan said. It's been 5 years for us. We still have challenges, but it's 15 years for us, and it's a challenge. It's never going to be over. If you lose that acceleration and impetus, it spirals down. And the entrepreneurs need to know this when they are starting. When you say, I won't work 9 to 6, but then you can work 9 to 12 or noon to midnight. So if you set out thinking that way, then your likelihood of failing is lower. And you mustn't fall in love with the product. You're not the only one in the world. You need to research your competitors. I did that in the beginning, and it's a trap that we fall a lot into. And I can talk about investors too. Investors shouldn't be buried in technical details. They need to ask those who knows the technical details, but our investors want to be involved in the technical aspect of it, because it's a non-existing product, but then they say you don't have competitors and you've got this and you've got that, but the right authorities need to assess it. We've got parts qualified that went to the space, so we can receive challenging questions in a much simpler product, so they shouldn't be stuck there. And clients are very important for us, and the Turkish engineers do best. Trust us. Take the first step. If you don't like the first product, okay, don't buy from us, but try it. Instead of paying 10 times, 15 times more from US, Europe, buy from a local company, so it's a win-win situation. Thank you. And that trust and confidence bit, the trusting, having faith in the Turkish engineering capabilities is important, because even in North America, both on the software and the hardware side, the Turkish engineers being successful and accomplished, we all receive feedback which makes us proud. And sometimes there is this operational blindness that we might fall into, or we are not that aware, but our engineers are very capable and valuable. And thank you very much for your contributions, the attendees, the participants, everyone who listened to us, and the Saha team as well. This year, indeed, it is very crowded, this convention, so it's going to be hopefully for Saha, for our country, and for the entire ecosystem. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Değerli moderatörümüze
Distinguished moderator and panelists, thank you for this valuable speech on this new generation innovators, and the panelists will receive their gifts from the moderator.